Welcome to a universe full of stories. I want you to just imagine for a second that you are a galactic emperor.
Right, or even just, the head of a massive, incredibly wealthy, noble house.
Yeah, exactly. Because in this universe, for you, the listener, you have to understand that political paranoia isn't some sort of mental illness. It's a literal survival requirement.
It really is. I mean, assassins are constantly trying to slip undetectable poisons into your morning coffee.
Right.
Your elite bodyguards. They could easily be bribed with, the wealth of an entire planetary system.
Oh, absolutely. And even your own family members might just decide that a knife in your back is the quickest path to inheriting your throne.
Trust is just completely extinct in this society.
It is. The only person in the entire known galaxy that you can implicitly, absolutely trust with your life and your secrets and your physical body is your doctor.
But not just any doctor.
No. Because this specific class of doctor has been literally, psychologically, and chemically tortured.
To the absolute breaking point.
Exactly, to the point where their brain is physically incapable of even conceptualizing murder. They are the ultimate biological safety net.
And this is the core of our deep dive today. What happens when you take this indestructible, unbreakable psychological barrier and you figure out the one horrific loophole required to completely pulverize it?
That is the question. And for you tuning in today, we are embarking on a deep dive into the history, the agonizing training, and the ultimate tragic failure of the most prestigious medical faction in the Dune universe. We're talking about the Suk Doctors.
It is such a fascinating subject because it demands that we look very closely at the intersection of extreme human discipline, the commodification of trust, and really the absolute limits of the human mind.
Right.
We are dealing with a medical institution that genuinely believed they had engineered the flaw of human betrayal entirely out of existence.
And they were right for a long time, weren't they?
Oh, for 10 millennia, they were absolutely right. Until, of course, they weren't.
Which is exactly what makes this so fascinating to explore. We are dissecting how this system was built, why it was supposedly infallible, and the man who brought the whole thing crashing down. But, to understand how an unbreakable barrier gets broken, we have to first understand how you forge that kind of psychological iron.
Right. You can't just build a medical school like this overnight.
No, you definitely can't.
To understand the genesis of the Suk School, we really have to rewind the galactic timeline roughly 10,000 years before the events on the planet Arrakis. We had to look at the crucible that fundamentally altered the trajectory of human history, which is the Butlerian Jihad.
Oh, man. So, for those tuning in who might only know the Butlerian Jihad as a distant historical footnote, let's define the stakes here for you. This wasn't some trade dispute.
No, not at all.
This was a bloody, prolonged, existential conflict between humanity and thinking machines, like artificial intelligence that had literally enslaved or sought to eradicate the human race.
Exactly. And it is almost impossible to overstate the psychological toll this war took on humanity as a whole, but specifically on the medical professionals of that era.
I can't even imagine.
When we talk about the battlefields of the Butlerian Jihad, we are not talking about conventional warfare. We are talking about literal hells on Earth. Human soldiers were just throwing themselves against cold, calculating, tireless machines.
Right, just flesh against metal.
Yes, and the magnitude of the slaughter, the sheer volume of horrific, unprecedented wounds caused by, advanced lasers, radiation, and just mechanized crushing forces. It was beyond human comprehension.
The human mind just isn't built to process that relentless mechanical level of human suffering. Day after day, year after year, just sewing ripped apart humans back together, knowing they were going right back into the meat grinder.
Exactly, it broke them.
It makes me think of modern combat fatigue or severe PTSD, but scaled up to this galactic existential level. We're talking about the survival of the species here. So my question is, if the healers, the very people tasked with keeping the frontline soldiers alive, are losing their minds from the trauma, how does humanity even sustain the war effort?
That is the critical question.
Yeah.
Humanity survived because of the anomalies, the exceptions to the rule.
Okay.
And the most notable exception during this horrific era was a man named Dr. Rashid Suk. He was a frontline war surgeon. But what set him apart from his peers wasn't just his surgical skill, that was highly formidable. It was his exceptional, almost unbelievable psychological resilience.
Though he just didn't break.
He didn't break. In the midst of utter chaos, surrounded by this mind-shattering carnage that was literally driving his colleagues to madness or suicide, Dr. Rashid Suk maintained absolute sanity and composure.
Wow.
Yeah, his ability to compartmentalize the horror while still somehow retaining his fundamental humanity and empathy allowed him to perform tactical triage and complex surgeries under conditions that simply shouldn't have been survivable.
That's incredible.
The historical records suggest his personal resilience was actually a fundamental pillar in sustaining the League of Nobles war effort. He became this living symbol that the human spirit could withstand the mechanical onslaught.
So Rashid is out there in the mud, the blood, and the laser fire, just holding the human resistance together with sheer willpower, a scalpel, and an unbreakable mind.
Precisely.
He kind of lays the philosophical groundwork for what resilience looks like. But looking at my notes on the sources here, it wasn't actually Rashid who built the institution we were talking about today, right? He was more the inspiration, not the architect.
That is a very crucial distinction to make. The true institutionalization of this resilience, the actual foundation of the school, came generations later. It was driven by his great-nephew, Dr. Owandis.
Owandis, right.
Yes. Owandis was, by all accounts, endowed with a brilliance and a level of medical dexterity that surpassed even his legendary great-uncle. But more importantly, Owandis had something Rashid never had, which was peace.
Right.
Owandis capitalized on a very specific, pivotal historical window.
You're talking about the peace that followed the historic Battle of Corrin, where humanity finally defeated the machines once and for all.
Precisely. The aftermath of Corrin led to the signing of the Great Convention, which essentially established the new rules of civilized feudal warfare for the universe.
Yeah.
And most importantly, it universally banned all thinking machines.
Right, the famous commandment, thou shalt not make a machine in the likeness of a human mind.
Exactly.
So Owandis looks at this post-war universe, all the medical diagnostic machines, the robotics surgical assistants, the AI medical databases, they are all completely outlawed and destroyed.
Gone.
And he basically says, okay, well, we can never rely on machines to heal us ever again, so what's left?
What is left is the human animal. Owandis used this post-jihad cultural momentum to gather the absolute elite minds of his time. He recruited the greatest surviving biologists, chemists, anatomical researchers, and surgeons from across the galaxy, and with them, he founded the Suk Medical School.
Right.
But we really need to understand that this wasn't just a hospital or a university in the traditional sense. It was built on a revolutionary, almost religious, foundational philosophy.
Yeah, let's dig into that philosophy for a second, because this is where it gets really interesting for me. They're effectively saying, we ban the machine, so now the human body and mind must be forced to become the ultimate technology.
Exactly.
But isn't that just replacing silicon hardware with biological hardware? I mean, it sounds a bit like they haven't entirely learned the lesson of the jihad. They still want perfect, infallible machines. They just want them made of meat.
That is a brilliant way to frame it. And it really highlights the inherent paradox of the Suk institution. Owandis Suk believed that true human evolution and the absolute mastery of the human mind could only be achieved through complete, total control and the deep understanding of the physical body.
So they weren't trying to make humans into unfeeling robots.
No, they were trying to elevate the human baseline to a state of biological perfection that rendered machines completely obsolete. They believed that if you truly understood the physical mechanisms of the body down to the molecular level, you could unlock cognitive and psychological potentials that had been, suppressed by our previous reliance on AI.
Okay, so if you're building the ultimate medical school for the elite of the galaxy, a place trying to literally force human evolution, the price of admission has to be astronomical. Let's look at the barriers to entry, because getting into the Suk Academy sounds like an absolute nightmare.
Oh, the barriers are indeed Colossus-like.
Yeah.
Now, theoretically, the institution claims to maintain an open-door policy. From a public relations standpoint, they maintain the stance that any citizen of the Empire, from any planet with the requisite mental aptitude, can be admitted.
Which is a nice democratic idea on paper. But the reality of the Carino Empire is dictated entirely by brutal feudal economics.
Exactly. The competition for a spot, even in the most basic entry-level preparatory courses, is utterly fierce. Millions apply and a handful are accepted. And the tuition fees,
They must be insane.
they reach astronomical, almost incomprehensible figures. We are talking about the kind of wealth that only planetary governors or directors of interstellar monopolies possess.
Right. So in reality, this open door is reserved almost entirely for applicants who are not only off-the-charts geniuses, but who also have the financial backing of incredibly wealthy families or, a powerful noble house acting as a patron.
Exactly.
But what about the brilliant kids who don't have a billionaire duke as a sponsor? Because the sources mention the school actively scouts the universe for raw talent.
They do. They have a very aggressive scouting network. If they find a young, undeniable prodigy on some backwater planet, someone from a destitute background who possesses the exact cognitive profile they require, the Suk school will step in.
Okay.
They will offer that child education, housing, specialized training, and access to the greatest accumulated medical knowledge in human history.
But, as you might expect in this universe, there is a massive catch.
A huge catch.
And this is where it gets really dystopian. For you listening, put yourself in the shoes of that prodigy for a second. You get the golden ticket. But what are you actually signing?
You are signing away your freedom. These young geniuses without wealthy patrons are locked into brutal financial debt contracts with the institution.
Wow.
We are not talking about a small loan that you pay off in your 30s. We are talking about literal indentured servitude that lasts for decades, and in many cases, for their entire professional lives.
It is the ultimate student loan crisis.
It really is.
Think about it. You get the absolute best education in the known galaxy. You are a certified world-class genius, but you are legally owned by your alma mater until the day you retire or drop dead. You owe your existence, your placement, and a massive percentage of your earnings to the Suk school. It's a terrifying concept of institutional ownership.
Terrifying, but highly effective for them.
Right. But let's look at what the school is actually providing in exchange for that lifetime of debt. What does the curriculum actually look like?
It is grueling. The first stage of their academic journey is a decade-long foundational period.
10 years just for the foundation.
Yes. And what's crucial to understand here, and this ties back to Wanda Suk's philosophy, is that the directors of the Suk school categorically reject the idea of being a simple technical trade school. You do not spend those first 10 years just learning how to stitch a wound or memorize bone structures.
Okay.
During this first level, students undergo intensive training that covers advanced medicine and rigorous science, yes, but also a profound, immersive education in the liberal arts.
Liberal arts. Let's pause there for a second. We are talking about a brutal, feudal galactic empire where assassins are hiding in the walls. Why on earth is the most elite medical school making its students study poetry, history, and philosophy?
Because the goal is to mold thinkers, not just technicians. They want professionals endowed with a critical mindset, individuals capable of analyzing reality holistically.
Okay, that makes sense.
If you think back to the historical parallels in our own world, consider the Renaissance polymaths. Da Vinci wasn't just dissecting cadavers, he was studying art, engineering, and philosophy.
Right.
The Suk school demands doctors who understand the depths of human nature, ethics, and the historical tapestry of civilization. Why? Because you cannot program a deeply entrenched, unbreakable moral code into a mind that doesn't profoundly understand morality.
That makes so much sense. If the ultimate goal is the imperial conditioning making them practically incapable of harm, they have to first intellectually understand the sanctity of human life on a philosophical level. They can't just be meat mechanics, they have to be philosophers of biology.
Precisely. Now, for students who aspire merely to be medical auxiliaries, top-tier nurses, or standard general practitioners for wealthy clients, they will spend a full 10 years in this first phase before receiving their official certifications.
10 years of the most rigorous scientific and philosophical training imaginable just to become the equivalent of a general practitioner.
Yes.
And at that point, they can leave. They can go work for their patrons or use the school's placement network to find a highly lucrative job. But if they want to be the absolute best, if they want to earn the title of a full Suk Doctor, they have to push further into the abyss.
They do. To make that leap, they must pass a series of exceptionally demanding, almost impossible exams in advanced medicine, molecular biology, and complex philosophical rhetoric.
And take on more debt.
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah.
They have to assume the astronomical financial cost of the next tier of education. If they fail, they remain elite nurses. If they pass, they earn the right to enter the inner school.
The inner school. This is where the curriculum shifts from creating great doctors to forging something borderline superhuman.
That's the perfect word for it. The training within the inner school operates at a pace that breaks normal human minds. The sheer volume of theoretical and practical information they must master is staggering.
Like what?
Well, they acquire a flawless, exhaustive, cellular-level knowledge of human anatomy, physiology, and every known human pathology in the universe. They are trained to perform highly complex emergency surgeries with impeccable, almost robotic surgical precision, often in horrific conditions.
And they have to do this while managing the patient's pain, right? But the sources indicate they don't just rely on injecting standard painkillers. Let's explain how they bypass standard anesthetics.
They learn incredibly advanced body mechanic techniques, specifically a discipline known as pranabindu.
Pranabindu.
Yes, and pranabindu isn't just, advanced yoga or deep breathing. It is the absolute microcontrol of individual muscle fibers and nerve endings.
So we need to explain this mechanically for the listener. Imagine being able to consciously tell your heart to slow down to 1 beat per minute. Or, more relevantly for a doctor, imagine knowing exactly which nerve clusters to press on a patient's body to physically block pain signals from reaching the brain.
Exactly.
They are using their own highly trained nervous system and musculature to manipulate the patient's nervous system.
That is a perfect analogy. It is biological intervention overriding neurological response. Furthermore, in the inner school, they receive specialized, incredibly dense training in fine chemistry and molecular biology.
Okay, why?
This allows a Suk doctor to synthesize and administer bespoke medications, personalized entirely to the unique genetic and biochemical structure of the individual patient lying in front of them. They aren't prescribing generic broad-spectrum drugs, they are crafting molecular keys for specific genetic locks.
Wow. What stands out to me here, and what I find absolutely fascinating about their methodology, is their diagnostic ability.
Yeah.
The records state that a fully graduated Suk doctor can diagnose complex internal ailments by observing only the physical symptoms of a patient.
Yes.
They totally bypass laboratory technology. They don't need blood tests. They don't use MRI machines. They don't have biological scanners. It's a direct cultural hangover from the anti-machine sentiment of the Butlerian Jihad.
Completely.
They have trained the human eye, the sense of smell, the sensitivity of their fingertips, and their analytical mind to completely replace the diagnostic machines they destroyed 10,000 years ago.
It is the ultimate triumphant realization of Wanda Suk's foundational philosophy. The human mind and senses completely mastering the physical environment.
It's just mind-blowing.
However, as awe-inspiring as all of this medical prowess is, it is still not the pillar upon which the true prestige of the inner school rests. The definitive crown jewel of the academy, the singular thing that elevates a Suk doctor above any other healer in galactic history, is the Imperial Conditioning.
Ah, the Imperial Conditioning. The absolute, supposedly unbreakable psychological inhibition. This is the ironclad promise that a doctor will never, under any circumstances, take a human life, or consciously cause harm to a human being.
Yes, Wanda Suk originally conceived of this conditioning program to realize a utopian dream that the medical profession will be forced to act strictly and exclusively for the benefit of humanity.
Right.
But if we connect this lofty ideal to the grim reality of the bigger picture, the society of the Landsrod, we see why it became so practically valuable. We are looking at a feudal culture where political blackmail, subtle assassinations, and clan warfare are standard daily practice.
Oh, yeah.
If you are a planetary duke, the mental tranquility that a Suk doctor provides is literally priceless. You can sleep at night knowing the person holding the syringe next to your jugular will never, ever betray you.
But let's dig into the how. Because you can't just ask someone nicely to never commit murder. You can't just make them sign a pledge. The process of actually forging this unbreakable mind, frankly, it sounds like absolute psychological torture. It sounds like they have to break the human being to build the doctor.
It is a harrowing, years-long, highly systematic process executed by absolute masters in psychology and mental manipulation. The foundation of it is actually intellectual, which brings us back to that liberal arts education we mentioned.
Okay, how so?
The philosophical training they received in the outer school serves as the intellectual bedrock. Inside the inner school, advanced medical teaching is combined with intense, aggressive sessions of rhetorical debate, philosophical argumentation, and doctrinal defense.
So they start by breaking them down intellectually. They trap the student in philosophical logic loops, basically arguing them into a mental corner where doing harm is philosophically and logically impossible.
Exactly.
But a good argument doesn't stop someone from plunging a knife in the dark. It has to go way beyond debates.
Oh, far beyond. The rhetorical dynamics are seamlessly intertwined with increasingly intrusive hypnagogic therapies.
Let's define that. Hypnagogic states are that weird twilight threshold between being fully awake and falling asleep, right? Where your brain is incredibly suggestible.
Exactly. As the instruction advances, the candidate is systematically pushed into psychological states of extreme, almost dangerous receptivity.
And how do they do that?
They achieve this through a combined application of those pranabandhu muscle control techniques, forcing the student's body into specific, vulnerable, paralyzed states, and the selective administration of potent neurochemical drugs.
Man, I want you, the listener, to really visualize this for a second. Put yourself in that chair. You have been drugged. Your muscles are locked into a state of hyperreceptivity using ancient nerve control techniques. You cannot move.
You're completely helpless.
And you are subjected to what the historical records bluntly call marathon subliminal interrogations. You're subjected to 36 hours of nonstop psychological hammering. They are using extreme physical exhaustion, sensory overload, and chemical manipulation to violently tear down the natural defensive barriers of your subconscious mind.
They aren't just brainwashing the student. They are creating a physical, neurological block. It is akin to putting a strict electronic governor on a high-performance car engine.
Oh, I like that analogy.
Right. No matter how hard you press the gas pedal, the engine will automatically cut fuel before it goes over a certain speed. For a Suk doctor, if they even begin to consciously conceptualize the act of harming a patient, their rewired nervous system literally shuts down the motor function in their limbs. Their brain will not allow their hand to strike.
That is terrifying. It's a self-contained biological prison. And it escalates even further, doesn't it?
It does. During the final, most brutal years of the inner school, this subliminal reprogramming continues even while the aspirant sleeps.
Wow.
There is no sanctuary. There's no escape from the conditioning, not even in dreams. The psychological manipulation is so profoundly severe, so fundamentally intrusive to the human ego, that it is not uncommon for students to suffer complete mental collapse. They go permanently insane.
And the sources say some of them actually die.
Yes. The sheer systemic shock of having your core psychological architecture rewritten can lead to fatal physiological failures. Some students simply die during the process.
The school is literally breaking their minds, just running them through a psychological meat grinder to rebuild them without the capacity for violence.
Yeah.
And for those very few who actually survive this hellish crucible, who emerge with their sanity intact and their neurological block firmly in place, they earn the mark.
Yes, those who survive emerge with that absolute mental barrier. They are constitutively, biologically incapable of consciously causing harm to another human being. To signify this monumental triumph, graduates receive the distinctive, highly visible marks of their status.
The famous marks.
The most iconic of these is the tattoo of a black diamond placed prominently in the center of the forehead.
And we need to clarify, this isn't just regular tattoo ink you get down at the parlor, because if it was, any assassin could just tattoo a diamond on their head, put on a white coat, and walk into a duke's bedchamber.
Precisely. Identity theft would be rampant. The black diamond tattoo possesses unique, irreproducible molecular and chemical characteristics. It is essentially a biological barcode woven into the skin.
Okay, so it can be verified.
Instantly. It can be verified instantly through simple microscopic observation or chemical swabbing by a house's security personnel. This makes identity theft of a Suk doctor completely impossible. A skin graft wouldn't work. The surrounding tissue would reject the specific molecular signature.
Right.
Additionally, graduates are granted the exclusive privilege of wearing their long hair bound in a distinctive silver ring engraved with the official ancient emblem of the Suk institution.
So when a paranoid planetary governor sees that specific black diamond and that silver ring, they know with absolute certainty that they are looking at a human being who has survived hell to become biologically incapable of harming them.
Exactly.
But let's bring it back to the economics, to the business of trust. How do these superhuman doctors actually operate in the galactic economy once they graduate?
Well, as you would expect, their services are quoted at exorbitant, kingdom-bankrupting prices.
Because they're the best of the best.
Right. They typically serve in the highest echelons of society as primary personal physicians for the great houses of the Landsraad, as chief medical directors of imperial armies, as planetary health counselors, or as the lead, highly classified researchers in massive pharmaceutical corporations.
Okay.
However, remember that massive debt we talked about?
Oh, right. The lifelong student loans.
As a condition of their graduation, they must sign an unbreakable, legally binding agreement to remit a hefty percentage of all their future income, back to the coffers of the Suk school.
They are paying off that lifetime student debt, funding the very institution that tortured them into perfection.
Exactly. Furthermore, the strict regulations of their medical order categorically prohibit them from ever working for free or engaging in simple charity.
Of course.
Because of this rule and the sheer staggering cost of their hourly services, most noble houses prefer a different economic model. They hire a Suk doctor on a massive permanent retainer.
Right. Because if you are the Duke, you are saying, I refuse to negotiate your hourly rate or argue over overtime pay while my son is choking on a poisoned dart.
No haggling allowed.
Exactly. You just pay the doctor millions of solaris a year to always be there, completely exclusive to your family. And their loyalty is so absolute, so thoroughly proven, that throughout thousands of years of documented history, there was never a single recorded case of a Suk doctor breaking this inhibition. That's why even the Padishah emperors, the paranoid supreme rulers of the known universe, trusted them exclusively.
Hence the prestigious name, Imperial Conditioning.
Imperial Conditioning. Which brings us to the tragic pivot of our deep dive. For all the infallible history of the Suk school, for all the thousands of years of unbroken trust, there is one name that stands out in eternal infamy. The most famous and undoubtedly the most tragic graduate of the institution.
Dr. Wellington Yueh.
Let's talk about Dr. Yueh. Because to understand how the system broke, we have to look closely at the man it broke inside of. He was born in the year 10812 after Guild, which places his birth exactly 109 years before the dramatic, universe-altering events that unfold on the desert planet Arrakis.
Right.
He survives the nightmare of the inner school, graduates at the age of 30, and eventually, highly regarded, enters the service of House Atreides.
And it is vital to note that he serves House Atreides faithfully for decades. He doesn't just show up and betray them.
Right, it wasn't some quick con.
Not at all. He becomes the chief medical officer, a deeply trusted inner circle counselor to Duke Leto Atreides. He becomes a beloved, respected friend to the tough, cynical members of the ducal council men like Duncan Idaho and Gurney Halleck.
The hardest guys to win over.
Exactly. And perhaps most intimately, he serves as the personal tutor to the young ducal heir, Paul Atreides.
The historical records paint a very specific, vivid, physical picture of him. He had this harsh, angular face, a square head, and a long, drooping black mustache. His lips were famously stained a deep purple from the heavy use of sappho juice.
Let's unpack the sappho juice, because that is a really interesting detail for a doctor. Sappho juice is a highly addictive, high-energy liquid extracted from barrier roots, primarily used by mentants, the human computers of this universe, to drastically amplify their cognitive processing power.
So yeah, this biological master is using cognitive enhancers meant for human calculators. It really shows an obsession with mental acuity, just pushing his already hyper-trained brain even further.
Absolutely.
And of course, he bore the black diamond on his forehead and the silver ring binding his black hair, but what really sets him apart from the thousands of other Suk doctors operating in the galaxy is his personality.
This is a crucial distinction that makes his story so heart-wrenching. Throughout the Empire, Suk doctors were frequently known and widely disliked for being exceptionally cold, distant, clinical, and arrogant.
They were kind of jerks.
Well, they were, after all, the unquestioned, untouchable elite of the universe, and they acted like it. Yeah, by stark contrast, was noted in all journals for his affable, modest, and profoundly refined demeanor.
He was nice.
He wasn't a sterile medical droid. He possessed a genuine, deep human warmth that won him the sincere affection of the entire Atreides family.
He wasn't just a medical asset on a spreadsheet to them, he was family. He was Uncle Yueh to Paul, which makes his ultimate catastrophic fate so much more devastating. And to understand the mechanics of that fate, we have to look closely at his personal life, specifically his marriage.
Yes. During his adult life, Yueh married a woman named Wann. The records show she was 10 years his junior, possessed a highly charming, intelligent face, and most crucially for our story, was a deeply entrenched member of the Bene Gesserit order.
Right.
In fact, she was a loyal servant of this sisterhood, who had achieved the highly advanced, incredibly rare rank of Truthsayer.
Now, wait a minute. Let's push back on the power dynamic of this marriage for a second. The Bene Gesserit are the ultimate puppet masters of the universe, right? They're breeding bloodlines and manipulating politics.
Yes.
And a truthsayer is someone trained to detect the absolute truth by reading microexpressions, pheromones, and vocal pitch. The sources explicitly state that the Bene Gesserit assigned Wann to be by the doctor's side with the implicit, hidden goal of monitoring his highly promising, potentially disruptive scientific research on the planet Riches.
Yes, that was her original mission.
You loved her obsessively with an absolute all-consuming passion. But what about her? Was she just a spy? Was she just doing a job for her sisterhood?
It is a dark, complex reality to untangle. While Yueh's love was absolute and unconditional, the affection Wann showed him was, at least fundamentally, always conditioned by the supreme orders of her sisterhood.
Wow.
We cannot know for certain if she truly loved him in the end, but we do know that her manipulation extended into the most intimate, vulnerable parts of their marriage. The couple never conceived children.
And this wasn't a medical mystery to you. Remember, we are talking about a Suk doctor with absolute cellular level anatomical knowledge. He could diagnose a disease by looking at you. He knew for a literal biological certainty that there was no physical, genetic, or biological impediment in either of them.
Exactly.
They were perfectly, easily capable of having kids.
And it tormented him for years. It was a gaping wound in his psyche. He agonized over why Wann continually refused to conceive, quietly, fearfully suspecting that her refusal was tied to a secret, unbreakable mandate from the Bene Gesserit.
And he was right.
Historical revelations, unearthed much later, proved his darkest suspicions correct. The sisterhood had analyzed Yueh's genetic profile and determined that he lacked any genetic value for their millennia-long Kwisatz Haderach breeding program.
They deemed the most brilliant doctor in the universe genetically useless. That is so brutally cold, just you are smart, but your genes don't fit our puzzle, so your bloodline ends here.
It gets even colder. What you never knew, a devastating secret that Wann maintained flawlessly with her Bene Gesserit training and took to her grave, was that before their marriage, she had already served the sisterhood's genetic program. She had already given birth to 4 children for the Bene Gesserit.
Man, put yourself in Yueh's shoes for a second. It is gut-wrenching. He spent his entire adult life desperately wondering why the woman he loved more than life itself wouldn't have a child with him.
Blaming himself.
Right, blaming himself, blaming biology, never knowing she had already been a mother 4 times over for her secretive order. He is trapped in a marriage that is at least partially a high-level surveillance operation, loving a woman who is keeping fundamental, world-altering secrets about her own life from him.
Yes.
But the tragic irony is that this intense, obsessive, unconditional love he has for Wann becomes the exact psychological weapon used to destroy him.
Which brings us to the year 10186. This is 5 years before House Atreides receives the fateful Imperial order to pack up and move to the desert planet Arrakis.
This is the moment the jaws of the trap snap shut. The ancient, blood-soaked enmity between the noble House Atreides and the brutal House Harkonnen catches Dr. Yueh in a lethal snare.
In a highly classified shadow conspiracy orchestrated jointly by the Padishah Emperor Shaddam IV and the monstrous Baron Vladimir Harkonnen, Wann Marcus is captured.
And she isn't just kidnapped by local thugs.
No.
She is taken by agents of the Bene Tleilax. For the listener, the Tleilaxu are the masters of biological manipulation, a secretive, deeply unsettling faction.
Yes, the Bene Tleilax served as a haven for renegade geneticists and twisted mentants. And the most prominent, dangerous mind among them was Peter de Vries, who served as the sadistic, brilliant mentan for House Harkonnen.
And this is exactly where the supposedly unbreakable imperial conditioning of the Suk school meets an unstoppable, horrifying force. De Vries' subjects wanted to unimaginable, sustained torture using Tleilaxu pain amplifiers.
Yes.
And he forces you to watch, or at least provides him with enough proof of her ongoing agony to shatter his reality.
If we analyze the psychology of this precise moment, it is profoundly dark, but also incredibly revealing about the nature of the conditioning.
How so?
Well, we established earlier that the Imperial Conditioning prevents a Suk doctor from causing harm. It is fundamentally built on a philosophical and neurological foundation of preserving human life and alleviating suffering.
Right. Alleviating suffering is key.
Peter de Vries, with his hyper-amplified mentat brain, understands this mechanism perfectly. He knows that he cannot bribe you. He knows he cannot threaten you with death because Yueh doesn't fear death. He knows that Yueh's obsessive, all-consuming empathy and love for Wann is his only vulnerability.
So he uses that against him.
So de Vries weaponizes the conditioning itself. He uses the devastating, ongoing, scientifically amplified suffering of Wann as a psychological lever.
He weaponizes the very empathy the Suk school drilled into him. He essentially says, your conditioning demands that you alleviate suffering. Look at your wife. I am causing her infinite suffering, and I won't stop until you do what I want.
Exactly. The twisted mentat promises Yueh that he will release Wann from her agony, but only on one absolute condition. You must act as a deep-cover, infiltrated sleeper agent to bring about the total destruction of House Atreides.
Yeah.
The promise of ending Wan's agonizing, artificially amplified pain is the only concept powerful enough to pulverize the supposedly indestructible Imperial conditioning.
I want to pause here and emphasize the sheer psychological torment of the next 5 years for you.
Yeah.
I want the listener to really feel this.
It's unbearable.
For half a decade, Yueh lives as a sleeper agent in the Atreides household. He wakes up every day, checks the Duke's vitals, drinks coffee with Duncan Idaho, smiles at young Paul. And all the while, he doesn't see his wife. He doesn't know for sure if she is already dead or if she has been handed over to the Kilaxu to be turned into one of their grotesque axolotl tanks, those living, brain-dead flesh receptacles used for cloning.
Right.
He is driven entirely by this agonizing, constant emotional blackmail, desperately biologically desiring to end her pain.
It is a 5-year descent into a personalized silent hell. His highly trained mind is fractured. He is forced to betray the family he genuinely loves, day by agonizing day, smile by deceptive smile, in order to save the wife he obsessively loves. The psychological friction of that contradiction is unimaginable.
It really is.
Which brings us to the year 10191. House Atreides is preparing to leave their ancestral water world of Caladan for the harsh deserts of Arrakis.
The move to Dune. The trap is set. And even in the midst of packing for this impending doom, Yueh continues his daily duties. He is still tutoring young Paul Atreides. And there is a deeply poignant moment in the lore here. During a lesson about the harsh ecology of Dune, Yueh gives Paul a very specific gift.
Yes.
A miniature, incredibly rare, 1,800-page copy of the Orange Catholic Bible, equipped with a tiny magnification device so it can be read.
A gesture born entirely, tragically, from a deeply tormented conscience.
It's the most incredible, tragic irony. Let's unpack what this book is. The Orange Catholic Bible is the foundational religious text of this post-jihad universe. It's a massive synthesis of ancient Earth religions designed to help humanity gain consciousness of itself as part of the totality of God.
Correct.
Yueh gives Paul this sacred text to ease his own guilty conscience. He is desperately seeking spiritual solace, trying to impart some moral guidance as an apology for a massacre he hasn't even committed yet.
Yes, that's exactly what he's doing.
He is effectively saying, I am about to destroy your life, so here is a book about finding God. And in doing so, he inadvertently hands Paul a text that will heavily influence Paul's own messianic awakening on Arrakis. Yueh's desperate guilt helps provide the philosophical framework for the Kwisatz Haderach.
It perfectly illustrates the unintended sprawling consequences of a fractured mind acting under extreme duress. Now, once the ducal court actually settles into the massive stone palace on Arrakis, the atmosphere is incredibly palpably tense. Everyone knows a Harkonnen trap is coming. Thufir Hawat, the legendary Atreides Mentat and Master of Assassins, is actively, obsessively looking for an internal traitor.
But Hawat completely, utterly misses Yueh, which begs the question, how does a Mentat, a human computer trained in logic and deduction for nearly a century, miss the sleeper agent sitting right next to him at the dinner table?
It is a classic case of institutional blindness. Hawat is brilliant, but he's rigid. He investigates you, of course. But what does that investigation look like?
Right, what does he actually do?
He verifies the molecular authenticity of the black diamond tattoo on Yu's forehead. He checks and cross-references his graduation registry at the inner school. And because the historical record states that the Imperial Conditioning has never been broken in 10,000 years of recorded history, Hawat categorically, logically dismisses the doctor as a suspect.
The logic trap.
Exactly. His logic dictates. Suk Doctors cannot betray. You is a Suk Doctor, therefore, you cannot be the traitor. He places blind, absolute faith in the infallibility of the Suk system.
And that blind faith, that reliance on ancient reputations, becomes House Atreides' fatal blind spot. The system worked so well for so long that it blinded the smartest man in the room.
Yes.
And meanwhile, Baron Harkonnen is playing magnificent, cruel games from afar. He deliberately frames Lady Jessica, the Duke's Bene Gesserit concubine and Paul's mother, to sow paranoia within the Atreides ranks. It works so well that loyal, hardened men like Gurney Halleck and Duncan Idaho actually start to believe she is the traitor.
The paranoia reaches a boiling point, and this leads to one of the most tense, fascinating psychological confrontations in the entire historical record. Lady Jessica, who possesses advanced Bene Gesserit training, explicitly designed to detect the most minute physiological signs of lying, actually calls Dr. Yueh into a room and questions him directly about the threat.
So you have a man actively plotting a massacre, hiding the codes to the shield generators, sitting in a small room with a human lie detector who can hear his heart rate and smell his adrenaline.
Exactly.
How on earth does he survive that conversation without her instantly knowing he is the traitor?
He survives by brilliantly using the very tools of the Bene Gesserit against them. Yueh utilizes highly evasive, complex conversational techniques that he learned over decades of observing his wife, Wann.
Oh, wow.
When Jessica probes him, he manages to answer her questions evasively, deflecting the core intent without ever pronouncing a single direct, factual lie that her finely tuned, hypersensitive senses could detect. He speaks in half-truths, emotional misdirections, and philosophical generalities.
So he just skirts the truth without breaking it.
Yes. He keeps his cover intact, but the internal psychological toll of sitting there, deceiving the people he genuinely loves, is immense. The record suggests he laments internally during this entire exchange, desperately wishing he could just hate these people instead of loving them, because hatred would make the betrayal so much easier.
But the genuine affection he feels for them isn't enough to stop the freight train. The momentum of the blackmail is too strong. The night of the Harkonnen attack arrives, and Yueh executes the final, devastating phase of his treason.
The betrayal is absolute and ruthlessly efficient. Using his medical access, he administers a powerful, undetectable sedative to both Lady Jessica and young Paul.
Okay.
He then sabotages the massive protective energy shields of the Arrakis palace, shorting out the generators and leaving the doors wide open for a massive, overwhelming landing of Harkonnen shock troops and disguised Imperial Sardaukar terror troops. Finally, he moves on the Duke. Yes. He immobilizes Duke Leto Atreides with a paralyzing dart.
The Duke falls to the floor, paralyzed, but Leo is still fully conscious. He can see, he can hear, he just can't move. And here, right in this moment, is where Yueh reveals the true, complex depth of his subversion. He doesn't just hand Leto over to the Harkonnens like a compliant servant.
No, he doesn't.
He offers the paralyzed Duke a final, desperate chance at vengeance against the Baron. Let's detail this mechanic, because it is both medically brilliant and absolutely horrifying. Yueh physically forcefully extracts a real tooth from the paralyzed Duke's mouth.
Yes, and he replaces that extracted tooth with a perfect synthetic fake, an exact duplicate that mimics the nerve structure perfectly to bypass all standard Harkonnen poison detectors and scanners.
But it's not just a tooth.
No, inside this fake tooth is a tiny, fragile capsule containing a highly toxic, instantaneously lethal gas.
Yueh leans over the paralyzed Duke and tells him exactly how this grim play will unfold. He tells Leto that he will be delivered to the Baron, he will be tied up, seemingly helpless and broken. The Baron, who is infinitely arrogant and loves to gloat, will inevitably lean in very close to mock his defeated enemy.
He always does.
In that precise moment, Yueh tells the Duke to bite down hard on the fake tooth, breaking the capsule and violently exhaling the lethal gas directly into the Baron's face.
It is a literal kamikaze mission.
Yeah.
The release of the gas will absolutely kill Leto as well, but Yueh knows, and Leto knows, that the Duke is already doomed. The Baron will never let him live. To convince the proud Duke to cooperate with this final suicidal act, Yueh makes a profound bargain for the lineage. He promises Leto, swearing on his life, that he will save Paul and Jessica from the slaughter.
And here's the wildest part. In the midst of orchestrating the downfall of the entire house, Yueh actually keeps that promise. He is a traitor, but he is a traitor with a bizarre code of honor.
Yes.
He actively arranges for Duncan, Idaho to intercept the Harkonnen guards and rescue the sedated survivors, pointing them toward the deep desert where the Harkonnen forces can't easily reach them. He even pulls the ducal signet ring off Leto's paralyzed finger and hides it in a survival from kit stashed aboard Paul's escape ornithopter, along with a full, unvarnished letter confessing his crimes and explaining his motives.
He single-handedly ensures the continuity of the very house he is currently destroying. It is a stunning display of compartmentalization.
Truly stunning.
Once the paralyzed Duke is safely delivered to the Harkonnen forces, Yueh steps forward to face the monster. He demands his prize, the fulfillment of the 5-year agreement. He demands to know the truth about Wann, to see her, to end her pain.
And the Baron, with maximum theatrical cruelty, delivers the final crushing blow. He looks at you and reveals that Wann has been dead for years.
I'm long dead.
The entire 5-year blackmail, the agonizing sleeper agent existence, the betrayal of the Atreides, the deaths of thousands of soldiers, it was all for a ghost. The Baron kept his promise to release her from her pain by killing her long before Yueh ever set foot on Arrakis, and then the Baron promises to reunite them immediately. Peter DeVries steps up behind the doctor and stabs you in the back.
As he falls to the floor, bleeding out on the cold stone, his final act is a masterclass in psychological warfare. With his dying breath, he looks up and whispers to the Baron, planting a lethal seed of doubt.
What does he say?
He suggests that he, the genius Suk Doctor who outsmarted them all to get the shields down, fully foresaw his own murder, and that he bought something much more valuable with his life than just the Baron's empty promises.
It's a brilliant, vindictive final move. He paralyzes the Baron's mind with paranoia right before the physical trap of the poison tooth is supposed to spring. He wants the Baron terrified in his final moments.
The aftermath of this convoluted plot, however, is decidedly mixed. The Duke's poison tooth plot doesn't fully succeed in cutting off the head of the snake.
Right.
Leto does eventually bite the capsule. The lethal gas is violently released into the room, and it instantaneously kills Peter de Vries and the captain of the guard. But the Baron's sheer paranoia, perhaps heightened by Yueh's final words, combined with his quick physical reflexes, save him. He activates his shield suspensors and throws himself backward, escaping behind a sealed door, barely surviving the gas.
The Baron lives to fight another day. Leto dies a tragic death. Yueh dies a broken man. But Paul and Jessica survive. Because of Yueh's meticulously packed supplies, the Frem kit, the ducal ring, the Atreides bloodline escapes into the deep desert, finding refuge with the Fremen.
Yes.
From the ashes of Yueh's devastating betrayal, House Atreides is eventually reborn, hardened by the desert, to ultimately conquer the entire known universe.
But history, as written by the victors and the chroniclers, is rarely written with nuance. Despite the incredibly complex human motivations at play, despite the agonizing 5-year emotional blackmail, and despite the indisputable historical fact that he single-handedly saved the heir to the dukedom, the galactic record is merciless.
History doesn't care.
No, it doesn't. The supposedly infallible 10,000-year reputation of the Imperial Conditioning of the Suk School is permanently, irrevocably stained. For all future generations, Dr. Wellington Yueh is stripped of his complex humanity, stripped of his agonizing choices, and remembered for eternity simply and brutally as the traitor.
It is an incredibly heavy, complicated legacy. It leaves you feeling deeply conflicted about the man. Which brings us to the final thought, the core paradox that we want to leave you with today.
This raises an important, lingering question for you to ponder, a question that recontextualizes the entire deep dive. The official historical record claims that Peter de Vries broke the Imperial Conditioning through the relentless application of pain and emotional blackmail.
Right, that's the official story.
But let's think back to our discussion of the liberal arts, to the foundational philosophy of the Suk School. They are programmed to believe that a doctor must act strictly for the benefit of humanity and the preservation of life. They are programmed to alleviate suffering. So we must ask, did Yueh's conditioning actually break? Or did his highly trained, hyper-empathetic mind simply trap him in an impossible, unsolvable paradox?
They programmed him to preserve life and alleviate suffering at all costs. But they never programmed him for what to do when those two directives directly contradict each other.
Exactly. Did he weigh the agonizing, artificially prolonged suffering of his wife against the inevitable deaths of the Atreides, who are likely doomed the moment the Emperor sided with the Harkonnens anyway, and ultimately find a bloody self-sacrificing loophole? A logical loophole that ended Wanna's pain? Successfully eliminated the sadistic mentat Peter de Vries, who orchestrated it all, and ensured the survival of the Atreides bloodline.
That is wild to think about.
Did the conditioning truly break, or did it function perfectly, operating with cold, utilitarian logic in an impossible no-win scenario?
It completely flips the script on how you view the traitor. If this deep dive into the fascinating history of the Suk Doctors and the deeply tragic fate of Dr. Yueh was valuable to you, we invite you to support the channel. Please subscribe so you don't miss our future explorations of science fiction lore. Leave a like on this video, share this content with fellow fans, and drop a comment below. Let us know, do you think Yueh's conditioning was truly broken, or did his mind just outsmart an impossible system? Thank you for listening, and we'll see you in the next deep dive.